The term serial killer wasn't common until the 1970s, and serial killings reached a peak in the last 3 decades of the 20th century. This has led to a misunderstanding of the history of serial killers, as today, many put blame on urbanization or moral failings of Western society or liberal upbringing, conservative upbringing. Blame has been thrown around every direction you can imagine. But the truth is that humans haven't changed. Our psychological makeup didn't change in the 20th century. Psychosis and mental illness isn't new. We just understand it a little bit better. And we have access to records and mass media. That's why serial killers are not an invention of the 20th century. Evil isn't new. There have always been killers lurking in the shadows. On this episode, we look at some notorious serial murders of the 19th century and ask, is there anything we can continue to learn from these terrible cases? This is a study of strange.
Let's do it. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Michael May, and joining me is my friend Bridget Weitzel. And Bridget, thank you, first of all, for coming on the show. And I've wanted to have, you're one of the people where I'm like, okay, if I do a show like this, I got to have Bridget on.
Oh, nice, nice. Why is that, Michael?
Well, it's because I know that you have an interest in kind of like true crime stuff. And yeah, and we haven't talked about it a lot over the years, but I definitely know that is true. But what are you interested in terms of like the true crime type stories or programs or shows or documentaries? Like what fascinates you about that genre of content?
I think there's 2 aspects to it that get me. The first is what in the world can make somebody go off the rails so hard, right? Like, it's just such a foreign concept to me to be that upset or to just be that dark that you do some of the things that people do. Yeah. But then the other aspect of it that I find super interesting, because I'm a documentary person. I read the true crime, the nonfiction books, and I watch the documentaries. And the other aspect is the detective work, right? How do they get caught? Where's the science behind this? How, the stories that there's so many layers, the stories that people tell to protect the bad guys versus, who's going to give them up, and the way that police and detectives and forensic scientists, the way that their brains have to work to put these bizarre bits and pieces of non-logical things together is also fascinating.
Yeah, it's all fascinating. And people, because there are some people that kind of deride fans of true crime. That think we're all like, we're terrible people that are interested in these dark, macabre things. And it's like, no, there is a fascination with for me anyway, the psychological element of what would make somebody do these type of things. But there's also the mystery fan in me, just loves the detective work. Like, how are people solving these things? So what you said is actually perfect for today. So I'm even more excited now to have you on, because this episode is going to be a little different. I'm going to do, this is like a Cliff Notes version of some true crime cases. So it's 6 different serial killer cases, all from the 1800s.
Okay.
And part of that is just a lot of the kind of true crime I get more interested in is older stuff, because I'm always like, oh, that happened back then, but how did they even go about investigating that? It just intrigues me. And the other thing that was like a big inspiration for this show specifically is I do like the stories that kind of get overlooked. There are popular true crime stories that get told over and over and over and over again. And look, that's fine, because I still consume all those things too.
Same.
But it's like there are these kind of stories that get overlooked. So today, we're looking at 6 different serial killer cases from the 1800s. 3 of them have been solved. 3 of them have not. So it's a nice comparison to things. And so I think they'll hit all the things that you like in true crime. And you may have even heard of some of these. They're not all completely like unknown stories. They are, they're just not as popular as other ones. And also this kind of came about because I am researching an episode about the Bloody Benders. Do you know who they are?
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
Sounds
yeah,
like a punk
it's good.
band.
It totally is a punk band name. They were in 1862, 72. I forget the year right now, but they're a family, or they may not have actually been blood related, but they call them a family. They lived in a cabin in Kansas, and they would take in travelers who would,
Oh,
stay there
no.
for the night or get food. And essentially someone in the family would sneak up behind them, hit them on the head, steal their stuff, kill them. And they escaped. And it is
Oh.
there's been documentaries. I think there's even been like scripted movies, where people try to tell the story of this crazy family. But yeah, I'm researching that episode, and it's going to take me a while because there's a lot to go into. But I kept coming across these other stories of serial killers in the 1800s. So I was like, oh, I just want to share these, even if it is a Cliff Notes version.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is what we're doing today. So before we dive in real quick, if everybody's enjoying the show, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review. And also on Patreon, I have a couple of new stuff coming out in December. It's the week of Thanksgiving right now. So in a week or two, there will be some new content on Patreon. So please, everybody, check that out through our website, astudyofstrange.com. Yeah. All right. Where am I in my
Do
notes
it.
now, Bridget?
I've
Thank
already
you. Thank
started
you.
taking notes, Mikey. I've already
Oh,
written down bloody benders. I need to look
oh,
into it
nice.
more. That's fascinating.
Awesome. Oh, you'll love it. It is very fascinating. Yeah, I'll just dive in. I have all these other little like things that I wrote down in my notes of like, hey, mention how Jack the Ripper is famous, but like all these other
Mhm.
people that are just as crazy aren't. But that's the gist of it. So I can just
Yeah.
skip over that. Jack the Ripper, by the way, will come up like 3 or 4 times today because a couple of
Kinda
the
can't
cases
not,
you
right?
can't not in the 19th century. And people, we love to tell stories, people.
Yeah.
So a lot of people connect serial killers from back then, and they just assume, oh, that's Jack the Ripper too. Those
Right.
killings over there, that's also Jack the Ripper.
You're
So
right.
a number of people today, they're like, there are theories that some of these folks are also Jack the Ripper. I do not believe that, but we'll get
Right.
into that when I get there.
Awesome.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with the solved cases, and these are not in any chronological order.
Okay.
It's just in the order I wrote them down in. So we're going to start with the Kelly family, and the Kelly family. This took place in 1887. And when you read about it, people always call it Kansas, and this is very similar to the Bloody Bender story as well. In fact, I think the Kelly family learned about the Bloody Benders and copied them.
Ooh,
That is my own
okay.
personal theory. So it's
School of serial killing.
School of Serial Killing. So the Kelly family is 1887. When you always read it, they always say Kansas, and it's actually not true. This is pre a lot of states out west, and it was an area called No Man's Land. They may still call it that, but it's what today is the Oklahoma Panhandle. And
Okay.
back then, there was talk of it becoming part of Kansas, but at the time, it was just public land. It was just sort of unnamed no man's land, like they called it.
Mhm.
And this family, they moved in from Pennsylvania, or so they say. And everybody in this area of the country at the time, there's a lot of the homesteaders. There's a lot of people, even when there wasn't an area where people could homestead, they would still cultivate the land, build something in hopes that one day the government would be like, okay, that's yours. And
Mhm.
so you have a lot of people trying to land grab, and also people moving west. So after the Civil War, a lot of people are migrating west, and you have to go through Missouri and Kansas and Oklahoma. You have to go that way. So there's a lot of travelers, and in a way, it's kind of like the perfect place for serial killers because
Pickings
travelers,
good.
yeah, travelers, they need help. No one knows they're there. No one has cell phones. So, you
Mhm.
can't contact anybody. And people would go missing. Lots of people would go missing all the time from probably a lot of times just natural reasons. They get lost
Sure.
and, fall ill and, in long travels
Yeah.
or killed from Native Americans. Like all this kind of
Mhm.
stuff was very real. And so anyway, the Kelly family moves to this area, and it was near a town called Oak City. And this is about 25 miles away from present day Beaver, Oklahoma. The family had 4 people in it. There was William Kelly, sort of the patriarch of the family. He was around 55. He had his wife, Kate, son, Bill, sometimes called Billy, who was around 20, and their daughter, Kit, who was 18. I've also read 19 and sometimes 17. So somewhere around that age.
Yeah.
And the family put down roots. They built like a little cabin. And their whole story, by the way, happens in like the last 3 to 4 months of 1887. It happens very quickly. So they build this cabin, they try to get into the cattle business, but then they focus more on turning their cabin into a bit of like a tavern. So travelers could get a place to eat, stay the night. As again, a lot of people are moving west, so it's nice to be able to offer that, make some money. It's very smart. Good business people.
Definitely.
However, by like December-ish, a lot of locals in Oak City and the surrounding area start to notice that, wait, there's a lot of people that are going missing, like a lot more than normal. They don't suspect the Kelly family of anything, by the way. They're totally fine with the Kelly family until one day, a guy named S.T. Gregg came by the property. He was a traveler. He had stayed there before and gotten some warm food and, may have even stayed the night. So he was going to stop in again. And when he showed up, no one was there. The Kelly family was gone, and he kind of stumbled across something terrible.
Uh-oh.
And we're going to jump right into our first scene, Bridget. So,
oh, yes. Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah, it's all one document I sent you. So it's just the first page. And what I'll do is I'll read, there's not a lot of dialogue in this. So I'm going to read like all the description-y type stuff. So you're going to be Greg, S.T. Gregg.
Very exciting.
And yeah, let's do it. It's a short scene. It's going to go pretty quick. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So this is the Kelly family cabin during the day, and a man approaches the cabin on horseback. It's cold and the wind howls across the small valley, and the man, S.T. Gregg, holds his jacket tightly closed as he nears the Kelly home. There we go. I can talk. He hops off of his horse and looks around the property, and it's quiet. No one is working. No sounds are coming from the barn. No cooking or talking coming from inside the cabin.
Hello? Mrs. Kelly?
He gets no answer. Greg hitches his horse to a post near the barn and walks towards the cabin. He knocks on the door, and it swings open with a loud creak. He peeks inside, but it's dark, too dark.
It's Mr. Gregg. Hoping to catch a warm meal.
Nothing. Just the sounds of the wind, and then Greg gets hit with a strong, terrible smell.
Oh, Lord!
He covers his face and stammers back away from the door, but Greg knows all too well what that smell must mean. Yeah, there we go. So what's really interesting is I've been researching all these murder mysteries and serial killers of the 19th century. Death was so common back then, especially in the West. Like people are just surrounded by death. People in their family die all the time. Also, a lot of veterans of the Civil War. And so every book I'm reading and like article and little thing I read about all these different stories, whenever there's the smell of death, people are just like, oh, there's the smell of death. Just like
there's another one.
they just know it so well. So yeah, so this S.T. Gregg guy just knew immediately there's death. Like there's a dead body somewhere. So what he does is he actually starts looking through the cabin. Oof. And it's got to be dark and creepy and obviously smells bad. He found a little door that opens that goes into like a cellar. He goes into the cellar and he
never go down to the cellar.
Never go down the cellar. And he finds what he thinks are like 3 bodies. So,
oh crap!
Wisely, because there's no CSI back then. People don't know the right way to behave around crime scenes. But wisely, he just immediately leaves. He doesn't touch anything. He doesn't try to save anything. He just goes and he gets authorities. They round up like a search party. They go to the Kelly cabin. And there's more bodies besides just the 3 in the basement. In the barn, they basically look wherever there's loose dirt and they stick sticks down in it to see if something's in there. And so, yeah, all around the barn and the property, they find what is estimated to be 11 total people. And it could be more.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And again, I'm going to assume if they find 11, there's probably some more. Like,
there's no way they got them all.
More. Yeah. And so from what I've read, it's normally said that they could only identify 1 body, but I did find a few sources that say they identified 3. One of them is a guy named Jim Coven, who was a cattleman from Texas, J.T. Taylor, who was a salesman from Chicago, and then another businessman from Texas, a guy named Johnson. They did find a rusty axe, which may have had some like human flesh and blood on it, so they suspected that was like the usual. Yeah, it's definitely a good guess for a murder weapon. Mm-hmm. And word spread fast. And there's
I bet.
Yeah. So again, no Twitter or phones, but still like it spreads fast. And so the town nearby, Oak Creek, oh no, excuse me, in the town Beaver, Oklahoma, word gets to the people that are searching for the Kellys now that people in Beaver were like, "Oh, the Kellys? Well, they just passed through here like 2 days ago."
Oh,
They caught a whiff of the Kelly family to
as it
manner
were.
of speaking, and they head that direction, and they end up, because it's the Old West days, they get a posse together, and the posse is going to go hunt down the Kellys, and sure enough, they keep on them, like they're able to track them, and they found evidence of them at Palo Duro Creek in Texas, which you can actually, it's still there. Palo Duro Creek, still the same name, still around. You can go visit, and yeah, they gave chase. They ended up finding the family out in the wild, and they actually chased them for like 2 or 3 hours, like on
Oh,
horses and
wow.
carriages, going after them. So you can imagine the hoots and hollers and guns shooting in the air and everything else that probably is going around.
Amazing.
Kate fell off her horse during the chase and actually like broke her back.
Ooh,
And they eventually catch up, and they catch the son Billy and the daughter Kit. And William, the patriarch, skedaddles away,
of course he
and
does.
they start interrogating Billy and Kit. And essentially, Kit is like, she's playing the innocent. She's, I'm just the daughter. I didn't do it. Like, I have nothing to do with what my family does. And
Right.
her brother then goes, "What are you talking about? You were part of this too. We all were part of killing everybody. Don't you go saying you didn't have anything to do with it."
Whoa, he crumbled under pressure.
Yeah. And so, sort of Texas and Western justice, they just bring out some ropes and they hang them, just like right then and there. They do not arrest them. They do not send them back. The whole posse
Whoa,
just kills them. And then they keep hightailing it after William. So they chase William for a while longer. They eventually catch him. And they catch him by, like, I think holding guns and shooting at him. And finally, he just kind of like raised his hands. I was like, okay, I'm not going to get away from all this. And what they do with him when they stop him is they essentially say, like, confess to your sins. We know you did it. Your son, your daughter talked about it. We know you killed all these people. And William was like, no, I'm not talking. So they hang him, but then they drop him before he passes out.
that's
And they're like,
brutal.
yeah. And then they're like, confess, or we're really going to hang you. And so he confesses, and he says that sure enough, the whole family was involved, and he tells them where to find some like stolen money and valuables, and tells them where all the bodies are. And that's how we got most of the information about how they would kill people, is from this. Interrogation's not the right word. This is an
Torture,
illegal
man.
torture. Yeah. And look, you can't trust everything someone says under that type of duress, but like,
Absolutely not. But at the same
no.
time, what does he have to gain at that point, right?
Exactly. And they also have enough evidence from what other people have said and the bodies and the
Yeah.
cabin that, like, he's probably telling the truth for the most part, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So he confesses and says that they killed 9 men and 2 women, so 11 people
Jeez.
total. I don't know if I believe that number. It may be more, like I said. He was stripped of all his belongings and eventually just killed right then and there. What people say in terms of how the Kelly family killed their victims is that they would have somebody sit at the dining room table, and they would be feeding him or her, and they would put the person's chair on like a trap door to the basement, the cellar. And then at some point, someone would give a signal.
Ooh.
They would open the trap door. They would fall in and hope that, like, they'd break a bone or get hurt, so they're stuck down there. And then someone would go down and finish them off with an axe.
Oh,
As
man.
dramatic and like movie like as that is, they built this cabin super fast. I mean, this is just laying planks down and putting a roof over it.
Right.
I don't think there's a trap door in the sense of like there's a mechanism with a button or a lever that like opens it.
Sure.
I think there was definitely, a hole in the ground that you could lift up a little door and put people in. So I don't think they like used the trapdoor quite the way they say. This is just my own theorizing.
Yeah, that
I
makes
think,
sense.
yeah, I think they probably did more what the Benders were supposedly did, which is sneak up behind the guest and just whack them on the head and then
And then
throw
chuck them
them
down
into the
there.
basement. So that's just my own thinking about it was. And the interesting thing about this Kelly story is, again, it gets overlooked because the Benders get a lot of attention. But what I found fascinating is this is 10 years after the Bloody Benders that I mentioned.
Mhm.
So a lot of people, because the Benders escaped, assume that the Kelly family is the Bender family and change their name. I do not believe
Oh,
that. I know it's really cool. It's fascinating, but the descriptions and the ages don't match at
I was gonna ask
all.
about the
Yeah.
ages for the kids would be significantly different if it's 10 years
Yes.
later.
Because the kids, I think, were older than these two kids back 10 years prior in terms of the Bender
Uh-huh.
family. So I do not think this is them. Also, the Bender family, the two older Benders couldn't really speak English very well. And these people definitely could. They were seemed like they were from America.
Got it.
And yeah, so it's I don't think that matches, but I do think the Bender family got so much national press. And there's
Mhm,
articles, especially when they're moving to Kansas, where people are still talking about it, and the
mhm.
newspapers are probably still writing, articles like clickbaity articles for the
Oh,
time.
yeah.
That I think the Kelly family was like, "Oh, that's a good idea. No one's gonna catch us doing this. Like, let's just go for it. Let's
It's
learn from these
fascinating to
people."
think that they're motivated potentially by that, but motivated in such presumably the mom or the dad were the ringleaders of the whole thing,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah,
how twisted must you be to be like, "Let's make this a family affair.
yeah.
Let's teach our kids how to do
Let's
this.
get our kids to do this. This is a
It'll
nice
be
family
great."
thing. And so yeah, you got to think about the motivation of it. Is I do wonder if it was purely like an economical thing. Like, this is a way we're going
Steal
to make
from them.
money. Yeah, it's like we live in a really hard place to live. So
Mhm,
this is the best way to make some money and get some things is to
mhm.
steal it. But also that's so many people so
That's a
quickly
lot of people.
that like there's
Well, I
also
mean,
partly thrill to this too. Yeah.
there has to be, and I think, we have to resist the urge. This is what I do. I look at things sometimes, I'm like, "That makes no sense. There's no logic behind it." Well, let's be honest, there's no logic behind this at all anyway,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, saying, "Why would they do that so quickly?" You're gonna get caught. Well, because they're not thinking the same way that we do, obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
you know?
That's a really good point, and that's why it's so important that there are criminal psychologists now, whereas back then
Absolutely.
they didn't exist. People
They
that can
didn't.
study this, because that's the best way to help ourselves and help others is to
Yep.
actually understand what goes into this.
And you have
Um,
to wonder if they came wherever they came from to that area, were they doing things like that in
before
their
they
old
came,
homestead? Yeah,
yeah,
before they came,
yeah.
we have no idea, but,
No, we
you know
don't. There's no way to track it because they could have changed
mm-mm.
their name. They could have lied about where they were from. There's no way to
Mhm.
really check back then. So
That's dark
yeah, it's super dark. It is very dark and yet fascinating.
and fascinating.
Yeah. So now we're gonna turn ourselves and go across the Atlantic Ocean to England,
Lovely.
because there's all you gotta have if you're talking about 19th century, serial killers. You gotta have something in Victorian England because it is
Absolutely.
such a crazy, dark, interesting time and
So dark.
place. So I basically just picked one what they call Black Widow killers because there were a lot of women in the 19th century that just poisoned everybody they could.
Bitches were fed up, man.
Yeah, they were. And so I basically like closed my eyes and pointed a finger at a list. I was like, okay, I'll tell this one because there are so many. But back then, the reason I think poisoning was I guess, prevalent in a lot of these cases is because you could get away with it. There weren't always
Mhm.
autopsies. You could buy a lot of these poisons just off the counter and no one would think anything of it. So
Yeah, a
yeah,
lot of
you
them
could.
had medicinal uses if used
Mhm,
in a different way. So, yeah, you could
exactly.
go down to your little
Yeah,
general store and be like, "Oh, I'd like some arsenic, please," and nobody thinks
exactly.
twice about it.
Exactly, and also, the birth rate is just especially in Victorian England, is just
Yeah,
terrible,
yeah.
and even, like, I'm went on Ancestry a number of years ago because I was like, "I wanna find out about my past," and all my relatives they're all Southern farmers, and almost every family in the 19th century that I'm related to, they all had, like, 12 kids, and you look at it,
Oh,
and it was really confusing at first because you'll see the same name pop up twice, and you'll think, "Oh, this is because census records are bad and birth records are bad." It's like, "Oh,
babies
no, it's
died.
because babies are dying, and they just use the
Yeah.
same name over again."
I can't be bothered to think of a new name, so
Yeah. I already
it's
got
kinda
12
weird.
kids, I don't wanna think of another one.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's a lot of death, and even when marriages would end because of death, people would remarry quickly because you needed to have somebody to help you survive. So
Income.
people are like wives and husbands are dying all the time. So again, kind of a perfect situation for somebody that is a killer to kind of get away with it. So
Mhm.
we're going to talk about Mary Ann Cotton. She is people that follow these kind of stories have probably heard her name because she is one of like
Sounds
the
like a
famous
pleasant
black
name.
Marianne Cotton. Oh, hello. Her birth
Hello.
name was Robson, and which is not as pleasant of a name. And
Mhm.
apparently, in a documentary I watched about her, the Robson family, she's from Northeast England, and the Robson family was actually a clan in Scotland for like 100 or 200 years before this. They were raiders. They would like basically raid people and steal things. So that is potentially her heritage because of that name,
Wow.
which is really
Bloodline of thugs.
so she, as you can guess, living in, I mean, she was born in 1832. She did not have the best childhood. She grew up in a
I'm
mining
sure.
town. Her father was a miner. Her father died when she was, I think, 10, in a mining accident. People didn't have money. Hard life, hard life. Uh, she moves out when she's 16 years old, and she actually tries to do something a little different with her life than just be a miner or miner's wife. She tries to become a nurse. And this is in the area of South Hetton or Heaton. I apologize for
Okay.
listeners in the UK. I don't know how to say that name. But the family she worked for, she wasn't a nurse in like a hospital. She was a nurse for a family, like a well-to-do family that had 12 children.
My
Big,
God.
big old family. And a lot of people that study Marianne Cotton's story think that this is probably when she started to hate kids, is working for this family, which I
But
do not
why?
blame her at all. I do not blame her at all. She ended up getting married and kind of left that work, and she allegedly got pregnant 5 times, and none of her children lived.
Oh, no.
And some people, again, that have like studied her case, some people assume that there's, mental illness and depression, which can happen after that,
Yeah,
and
for
that
sure.
that may have influenced her psyche as well. She ended up moving back to Northeast England after all of this, and her husband, William, who did I write down his last name? I did.
Mhm.
William Mowbray. Her husband became a miner, and I actually read 2 different things. He either became a miner or he became a fireman on a steam vessel. I would like to say, having read a lot of old record things before in my life,
Yeah.
both could be true, because he
Okay.
could
That's
have been a miner
reasonable.
for a time, and also, those kind of things. And people
Sure.
just mistake one for the other. And they had more children. She had a daughter
Oh,
named
man.
Isabella, born in 1858. But then she died when she was 2. She had another
Good
daughter
Lord.
named Margaret Jane, who was born in 1861, a son named John Robert William, born in 63. And Margaret Jane and John both later died. Oh no, Margaret Jane lived. Sorry, I get very confused because there's a lot of kids in this story. I
That's a
apologize.
lot of kids, a lot of similar names, and a lot
Oh,
of
and we're
death.
not even done yet.
Oh,
So there
dear.
are more to come with all similar names, and a lot of them die. But John does die, and he dies from what they say is gastric fever.
Okay.
1865 comes along, and then William, her husband, dies of what they call typhus fever. And I shouldn't say what they
Okay.
call. That is a real thing, but they're not.
Typhus fever, yeah.
Yeah, but they're not really investigating it. They're just like, oh, this person died. How'd he die? Oh, he had typhus. Okay, he died of
Sure.
typhus fever. Oh, sometimes it's also read as intestinal disorder. So again, it depends on what you read there. That's really interesting.
Well, that's
That's
real
my
specific. Intestinal disorder.
Now, turns out William's life and the life of their children were insured by the Prudential Insurance Company, the PRU, as they called it, which, if
Oh.
anybody's listened to my first 2 episodes of A Study of Strange, William
Yep.
Herbert Wallace in those episodes worked for the PRU. So it's the same
Yep.
insurance company, but decades before. So yeah, they were insured. William was insured for £35, which is half a year's wages at the time. So that is a
Interesting.
good chunk of change. And this might have gave Mary some ideas.
Motive.
I'm just gonna call that out. So I don't need to go through all of her children and all of her husbands, because this is gonna be too long of an episode if I do.
How
But
many
she does,
husbands were there?
I think, 4,
Okay.
no, maybe 3. Her last husband, this is jumping ahead in the story, but her last husband, apparently she never got divorced from a previous husband who did live. He actually left her, thank goodness,
No kidding.
because he found out that she was stealing money from him, and they had lost like 2 of their kids, but he left
Oh,
her, so
geez.
he didn't die, and I don't think she ever formally got divorced. So her husband after that may have technically, legally not been a husband. That's why it's kind of
Right.
like 3, 4 husbands somewhere around there. So yeah, she basically, for a period of time, she only has 1 surviving child after many die. And she sends her daughter Margaret Jane, her daughter Isabella to live with her mother. Margaret Jane ended up dying before that. Sorry, again, you're
Of
going
course
to get
she did.
confused with all the kids. For a period of time, when her daughter Isabella is living with her mother, she is free from children and a husband. But this doesn't last long. She moves on quickly, and she marries a patient of hers because she does nurse for a little while to make ends meet. She meets a guy named George Ward in the hospital. He is sickly, which is already good
Mhm.
for her, but not sickly enough that he should die very quickly. And yet
Right.
he dies very quickly after getting married
How
to.
weird.
How weird. And the doctors even notated that they were like, oh, he died, but wow, we weren't expecting that. We thought
Mhm.
he would live a little bit longer. So then she starts working for a man named James Robinson. And this is the guy I mentioned that actually survived. She works
Mhm.
for him for a while, but her mother gets sick. So she leaves his house. She goes, stays with her mother. But her mother then dies just like weeks after she moves in with her mother.
Good lord.
And then her daughter ends up dying soon after. She moves back in with the Robinsons. She ends up marrying Mr. Robinson. And he had actually lost a child before she started working for him. So a lot of people are like, oh, well, he needs to get comfort from somebody. And the person working and living in his house at the time is Mary. So they end up striking it off. And again, you get married back then because you need the help. So it's like,
Right.
hey, you're a lady. I'm a man. You're here. Let's do this.
Right,
So
right, right.
so
It's
they
quite
get
right.
married. Yeah. So they get married. They have a couple of kids.
She's a fertile woman.
Oh, yeah. And Mr. Robinson, he starts to notice as they're married that
Mhm.
there's two things that kind of stand out to him. One is that Mary keeps pressuring him to ensure his family, their kids, and she talks about it a lot. And he's like, no, why
Mhm.
would we do that? And she pressures and pressures and pressures. And he thinks that's kind of odd. And then he starts noticing, like in his receipts and things, he starts noticing that numbers aren't quite lining up. And he realizes she's been like skimming money and taking money. She's also been selling some valuables around the house. So he gets fed up with her and he takes their son, George, their only surviving child at the
Yeah.
time, and leaves her. And which is a very smart man. Get out
Yeah.
of there when you're picking up
Run.
these signs. Run. She moves on and she marries someone else, a guy named Frederick Cotton, which is where she gets the name Cotton from. He was brothers with a friend of hers, and they marry in 1870. And while they're married, she hooks it up with an old boyfriend of hers named Joseph Natras.
Hey.
Yes, and so she's getting around. And yeah, I don't need to go through all the details here. Again, this is Cliff Notes of the day.
Yeah.
Essentially, she's killing everybody, and she's using arsenic. So you were dead on
Okay.
when you brought up arsenic
Oh, look at
earlier.
that.
And no one, again, a lot of people are dying back then. No one's doing autopsies, so people aren't really suspicious of her behavior. It's just
Yeah,
kind
but
of
isn't
odd
that,
and
like,
sad.
a lot? A lot? Like,
It's a lot. And then
it seems extreme.
she ends up hurting herself because she tries to take her son to a like workhouse, and she tries to give him away to the workhouse. And when she does it, she's like, you should take him. Don't worry. He won't be here long because this is a quote from her. His name was Charles, by the way. Charles would go like the rest of the Cottons. And so
Wow.
the guy at the workhouse thought that was really odd. So he actually told investigators about it. They can't really do anything at the time, but then sure enough, Charles dies when he's back home, like
Damn.
very quickly. And this puts her like in the target, so to speak.
I guess it seems super extreme because right now we're looking at it in a chunk, but I guess when it's happening over years and over time and the situation, the environment, like you said, of people
Yeah.
dying pretty regularly, it's easy to explain things away.
Yes. Yes.
Hindsight
100%.
2020.
Yes. And so what was interesting at this time is her plan kind of backfired on her because she had been insuring as many of her victims as she could.
Right.
And because the police suddenly have a target on her and they're investigating, her insurance payout for her son Charles isn't going through because they're
Sure.
investigating it. So she ends up, long story short, gets arrested, goes on trial. But before she goes on trial, she gets pregnant again
Oh
with, I believe
god.
yeah. And this was a typical tactic at the time for women on trial, because it's a way to sway some opinions about you from the
Sympathy.
jury. It sympathy. It also delays the trial because they wait until after you have birth. So she has to
Oh.
go through her whole pregnancy. She gives birth. Then she's on trial. She's having to hold the baby and take care of the baby on trial. And there are some people that were like, oh, look, it's so sad that she's got a baby. But luckily, not everybody kind of fell for it. And she was convicted and was hung. It is assumed that she killed between 16 to 21 members of her family.
Oh
Look at
my
your face.
god! I don't even have 16 to 21 members of my
Yeah,
family.
I don't either. I don't either.
Holy
Oh,
crap.
yeah. And it's a little interesting thing because I'm researching this as what's her name from Theranos? Elizabeth Holmes
Oh, yeah, Holmes.
is pregnant while she was getting her sentence read just, this week or last
I
week,
didn't
whenever
know
that
that.
was, very recently. So she's pregnant again with her second baby. And so part of me is like, oh, I wonder if that's a bit of a tactic to
It has
take
to
it
be.
easy on her. Yeah. It's an interesting thing. I don't know much about the Theranos story. I did watch that miniseries about her, but I haven't got into that too
I
much, so I
haven't
don't
seen
know
it
too
yet,
much
but
about her.
I'm definitely interested in it. Again,
Yeah,
that's not, murder and killing, but it's
yeah.
definitely a
Oh yeah,
psycho thing
oh
that
yeah.
I just don't get.
Yes.
So, Lady Cotton here, 16 to 21 members of her family. Holy crap.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
That's
And
and that's. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, you would think, like I said, yes, it's obviously a perfect storm, but after a while, don't other people in the family start to look and be like, okay, you've 6 people around you have
Yeah.
died. That seems extreme. How does it get that big?
How does it get that big? And especially, I don't know if she just, you can't Google search somebody. So when she's hooking up with these dudes or getting married,
That's true.
I mean, there's got to be enough people around that know her and can run into somebody down at the local coffee shop and be like,
You would
oh,
think.
you're getting married again, huh? I don't know. It's definitely really interesting to think about that. Yeah, it is really, really
Fascinating.
weird. So our last solved crime we'll do is Dr. Thomas Neil Cream. And this is one of the people, for those that follow true crime and serial killers, you may have heard him because a lot of people suspect that he is Jack the Ripper.
Okay.
I do not. He was in prison in Illinois at the time of the Ripper killings, so it's a leap.
Pretty far away.
It's pretty far away. And also, serial killers have very distinctive MOs. They have
Yeah,
very specific ways. The emotional and psychological reasons they're killing are very specific to them. So when someone's
definitely.
outside of that MO, it really doesn't make sense, and he's very different. Thomas Cream is also known as the Lambeth Poisoner, is a nickname some people call him. And he's a Scottish-Canadian doctor, and he would use strychnine poisoning
Ooh,
usually to kill people. And it's said he killed up to 10 people in 3 countries.
geez.
I don't personally think he killed that many, but a lot of people put that on him. He also had a
Okay.
very big mustache, which I know was the style at the time, but I just don't trust a doctor with a giant mustache. So,
No. What lives
and
in
I
there?
wouldn't,
That's shady.
yeah.
What are you hiding?
Yeah, what are you hiding? So his family immigrated to Canada when he was a kid. They lived in Quebec. He goes to medical school at McGill University in Quebec. This story has nothing to do with the serial killing, so it only takes up time today, but I really loved it. While he was at medical school, he had a skeleton in his room. He's a medical student. I'm not going to judge him for that. Back then, though, skeletons were real skeletons. They didn't use plastic and
Yeah.
stuff. His house or apartment building caught fire and burnt down, and for a while people thought he died in the fire because they found this burned up skeleton that
It's
was in
pretty
his room,
amazing.
but that wasn't him. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
And that's
So
still weird. I'm sorry. Yes, you're a
yeah,
patient or you're a student, but does everybody really have their own skeletons that they take home with them? I don't think
that's
so.
a good point. Yeah. So he gets a girlfriend named Flora Elizabeth Brooks, and she's the daughter of a hotel keeper in town, and she becomes pregnant. And this is where Dr. Cream's future sort of clinical work begins, I should say,
Uh-oh.
because he becomes an abortionist. So he
Oh.
performs a procedure on his girlfriend. Meanwhile, her girlfriend's father is super upset that her daughter got pregnant and forces Dr. Cream to marry her, and he didn't want to get married.
Uh-oh.
So as soon as they get hitched, Dr. Cream is like, I got to go. I'm going to go study more medicine in London. So he hightails it out of town to get away from his wife.
Oh.
And yes. And so he's studying medicine in London. And then, for a few years, he comes back to Canada. and he founded a clinic that performed abortions.
Okay.
And so in May of 1879, this is considered his first victim. A woman named Kate Gardner is found dead outside the back of his clinic. A bottle of chloroform is found nearby the body. Police go to Dr. Cream and they're like, "Do you know this woman?" And he's like, "Yes, she came to me for an abortion, but I did not provide an abortion, nor did I give her chemicals to kill herself with," and sort of puts it off. But because he's being investigated and this is behind his clinic,
Mhm.
people in town start to talk. The rumors start to swirl. It kind of hurts
As
his
they do.
reputation. So Dr. Cream ends up, and this becomes a common thing for him. He forges a letter that is
Oh,
supposedly
no.
from Kate Gardner, and it's a suicide note. And she claims this like local businessman is the father of the child that she wants to have an abortion for, and she's going to kill herself. Meanwhile, all her friends, all her family look at the letter and they're like, "That's not her handwriting. That's not
No, that's
her
not her.
signature." And so it's an interesting thing because Dr. Cream ends up he didn't get away with it. Like the letter did not work, but yet
Mhm.
he actually uses letters again and again and again. We'll find out. But this still, while he's being investigated, it hurts his reputation enough that even though he wasn't arrested, he did flee town. He moved to Chicago.
Okay.
And this is 1879. I forget if I ever gave any dates in this, so it's important to know.
Thank you.
In 1880, he performed an abortion on Julia Faulkner. In some of the articles, she's listed as Mary Ann. So I don't know if that's just
Interesting.
somewhere there's a mix-up or records are weird from back then, which they are.
Yeah.
And he gets arrested because of her death, but he gets acquitted because of lack of evidence. But people do investigate him right away. That's what's interesting about him as a serial
I
killer is
wonder
he doesn't.
what led them to him that time.
Yeah, I did not dive in deep enough to find out, but I do think
Gotcha.
it's probably because she had an abortion. People probably know where she went for the abortion, like that
Gotcha.
kind of thing. And then there was a woman named Ellen Stack who died from essentially an overdose of a prescription.
Okay.
And Cream is the one that provided her with that prescription, but he blamed the pharmacist. He was like, "No,
Yeah,
no, it's not me. The pharmacist messed up the chemicals and blah, blah, blah."
of course.
And so no charges are ever brought forward on that because there's just not enough evidence.
Right, he just
And
clearly is just a shitty doctor at this point
right,
in
a shitty
everyone's eyes.
doctor. A shitty doctor that then goes a little too far because he ends up killing a husband of a woman that he's having an affair with.
Oh,
And yeah, and you can read about this. The Chicago Tribune articles, they wrote about it, so you can actually read about this still. Um, so yeah, this in 1881. The gentleman's name was Daniel Stott, and Dr. Cream was having an affair with Julia Stott, and he is arrested. He is sentenced and goes to prison. And this is he's there for 10 years. So that's when the Ripper murders happen, is while he's very,
gotcha.
very well recorded in prison in Illinois. So as soon as he gets out of prison, he moves back to London, kind of has to get away, reinvent himself, and he lives on Lambeth Palace Road in London. And he met a woman named Ellen Donworth, who was a prostitute,
Of
and
course.
she got poisoned. And Dr. Thomas Cream, instead of just trying to somehow not be associated with these victims, he just starts blaming other people, kind of like he did with the pharmacist, kind of like he did with the forged letter. He blames a local businessman and says he's the killer. And then he wrote the coroner anonymously. He wrote a letter to the coroner claiming that he could tell the coroner who killed the girl for a reward, a fee.
Of
He will
course.
tell him. Yeah. And around this time as well, Dr. Cream was supposed to go on a date with a woman named Elizabeth Masters, and he never showed up on his date because he met a prostitute named Matilda Clover. And he went to Clover's home and then left. And later that night, someone found Clover screaming. She's in a ton of pain in her house. And the person that found her calls for a doctor. A doctor comes and treats her, and being very much the 1890 now, around there. The
Mhm.
doctor said, "Oh, she's been drinking too much. She's a prostitute, so she's going to
Oh,
die
good
because she's
lord.
drinking too much." And so that's why they claim that she dies that evening, is because she drank too much. Well, a few
Sure.
days later, Dr. Cream starts asking his landlady. He was like, "Oh, did you hear about this Mrs. Clover that died the other night? What do you know about it?" He starts talking to people and asking around. He accuses another doctor, like the doctor that found her and helped her, of killing her.
Good
And he
lord.
writes a letter under the pseudonym M. Malone
Okay,
to the
doc, this
doctor.
isn't working
Yeah,
well for you so far.
basically tries to blackmail the doctor. and
Mhm.
saying like, I know you killed her. I can prove that you killed her because you poisoned her. Well, what's
Mhm.
interesting about this is, remember, the doctor thought she died of drinking too much.
Right?
Didn't think she was poisoned. But here's a letter claiming this
She was
person can
poisoned.
prove she was poisoned. So it becomes very evident to this doctor takes the letter to the police. The police begin investigating because they're like, wait, if she was poisoned, then whoever wrote the letter killed her because they're the
Dun,
only
dun,
person that
dun,
knows.
surprise. Excellent
So
detective work.
again, long story, Cliff Notes version of this short. They actually look at the body, they exhume it, they study it. She was poisoned
Shocking.
from strychnine, and the authorities begin to realize that it could be this Dr. Cream fella. And
And at that point, are they able, I mean, he's so far from home, basically, are they able to connect him? Like, he's got a history of doing some bad
he's
shit.
got a history, and I think they are, because there is a story. I don't know how true this story is, but I think just by the nature of the story does make me think that in reality they were able to connect that this guy has been in prison for murder and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Because there's this interesting story about a New York police officer who comes to London for holiday, and Dr. Cream gives him a tour of all the poisoning killings going on and has tons of detail, like, oh, over here on the left, this is where the woman met, like gives her way too much detail. And so the police officer talks to local police officers and is like, oh, this Dr. Cream guy, he's really cool. He knows all these details about these cases. And there's a local investigator named by the name of Tunbridge, who is the one leading the case. And he basically figured out it was Cream right away. So
Yeah.
he was just putting all the evidence together. They didn't have enough to really get him for murder right away, but they did have him enough for blackmail because of the letter he wrote. So they
Got it.
arrest him for blackmail. And they did this strategically thinking, okay, while he's arrested for that, we'll have enough time to start putting together the pieces of the murder trial, and then we can get him for the murder. So it's kind of like arresting mafia members for tax evasion. It's like, let's
Absolutely.
just arrest him for tax because we know we can do that.
Get him off the street.
Yep. They arrest him for blackmail. They're able to actually, during that time, piece together enough information and enough evidence with the murders to then send him to trial for murder. And he's arrested, and that's the end of it. I think he was hung. I didn't write that down, but I do imagine, because that's what they did back then with murderers.
Seems to
So
be a
I do
theme.
think he was probably hung back then. So there's around 5 poisonings when I was counting it. That's like for sure him. But again, with a lot of these people, it could be a lot more. But Dr. Cream, I don't think, was the smartest guy. So
I was going to say he's
maybe
a
not.
doctor, so you assume he's an intelligent person, but then damn, really dumb
Yeah.
choices.
Yeah.
That's the lack of logic we were talking about before. Like,
That's
you
right.
can't
Yeah.
assign the proper way to behave to crazy
And
people.
you say that, and it makes me also realize I don't think the women were never robbed. They weren't. So I think the
Mm,
motivation behind his killings had to purely be for the killing. There's
yeah,
some kind of thing there.
psycho.
They're so psycho. And again, the MO, if you know Jack the Ripper, because some people claim he's Jack the Ripper. The Ripper obviously had a great emotional distress related very specifically to women, because he would
To
butcher
women.
the sexual organs were like
Mhm,
completely butchered, whereas this guy's just poisoning. Like, there's such a drastic difference in the way
mhm.
that these people operated that I'm not one of the people that takes credence in the Jack the Ripper Dr. Cream
No, plus, like,
connection there.
the most basic thing is the timeline doesn't add up.
Yeah,
He was
yeah,
obviously incarcerated when that was
yeah,
happening, so
exactly. All right,
fascinating.
so now we're going to some unsolved cases.
Ooh, let's solve them,
Yeah.
Michael. Let's solve them. You and me, we
Right.
got this.
God, I wish. I actually had a note at the beginning of my notes. I was like, maybe I'll say this, because I do try to come up with like theories in most of the
Sure.
cases I have. These are more like, I don't even have theories on some of these cases. I feel like it's so far removed with time that it's like,
Yeah.
in theories in terms of like, oh, it had to be this suspect. Like, I can't do
Mhm.
that. I can have theories about some other aspects of it, but not today.
Sure.
Maybe some other ones. You'll come back.
You never
When
know.
there's one I can break open, you'll have to come back on.
Oh my god, please. It's
Yeah,
my
that'd be
dream.
amazing. So we're going to start with the Austin Axe murders, also sometimes
Ooh.
called the Servant Girl Annihilator, sometimes the
Oh my
Midnight
god.
Assassin. I know there's amazing names for some of
These
these.
sound like B-rate horror movie titles. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
it. Servant
yeah,
Girl
absolutely.
Assassinator?
Servant Girl Annihilator, which is even a little bit
Annihilator,
better than Assassinator, I think, in
for
terms of like
sure.
B movie titles. So this one is relatively famous. I would imagine, I haven't looked it up yet. I would imagine there's other podcasts specifically about this case because it is really interesting. And maybe some of these as well, I might do deeper dives on to do bigger episodes in the future. So yeah, the Austin Axe murders, this took place in, did I just think that I would remember the date? Because I do that sometimes and don't write it down because I'll be like, I'll know when this happened.
Yeah, right?
1884. There we go. 1884. Into 85, because I think it started out New Year's Day, 85. Yeah,
Jeez.
January 1st, 1885. So the Austin Axe murderer claimed the lives of 8 people, 7 women and 1 man, and injured at least 8 other people. And most of these were servants. That's why it's the servant girl annihilator, who lived in the home that they worked in. And this person would come in, attack them while they were in bed. Some of the victims he would drag outside and either sexually assault or beat or bludgeon and mutilate. And so just not good things at all. This is not a family friendly episode, by the way. I don't know if anybody's figured that out yet. So I've read a little bit about this case in the past, and I used to think that this was only targeted African-American servants. Like in my mind, that's what I always thought this case was. But actually 2 of the victims were white, so it wasn't specific to race. It may still have been targeted at Black people and maybe just accidentally found white victims. But there could be a racial motivation in these murders as well. And I'm sure somebody's looked into that a lot more than I have. And Austin was not the city it is now. I know it's still not a huge city, but back then it was even much smaller. It had a population around this time of around 11,000 people. All of the streets were dirt at the time. Nothing had sort of been paved with rocks or stone or early street asphalt. I don't know what they used back then.
Well,
it was still dirt. They were building the state capitol building at the time. This is interesting to note. They had a state insane asylum and it had 500 patients in it, which is a lot of patients.
That's a huge percentage of the population.
Yeah, but they would put people, to be fair, because mental hospitals in that era are probably one of the most frightening places in the world, but they would put people in there for just like having a headache. It's like, oh, got to go to the asylum.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my wife won't have sex with me enough, so send her to the insane asylum. Yeah, so on January 1st, 1885, a servant named Molly Smith was found in the backyard. Her head was split in 2, and she also had stab wounds. Her boyfriend, who lived with her, was also attacked. He survived, but he was attacked and badly injured. They were African-American. And the police, as you can imagine, African-Americans in Texas in 1885, the police did not do a very thorough investigation.
No.
And what they would do at the time to investigate murders is they would bring in bloodhounds. The bloodhounds would try to get a scent, and then they just follow the bloodhound and be like, wherever the bloodhound goes, there's our killer. But the bloodhounds couldn't really pick up a scent. They couldn't do anything. So the police can't do a lot. However, they were still able to arrest somebody. They basically just said, oh, Molly Smith's ex-boyfriend. He's black because it had to be a black person. And I'm saying that as a cop at the time. That's not me saying that. That's me in character. And they arrested him even though he could not have done it. So this is where our second scene comes in, Bridget.
Oh, this is exciting.
Yeah. Okay. So this is just if you scroll down further on that page.
Yep, got it.
So you can read. Why don't you read Grooms? He's the police and the city marshal lead investigator. And I'll read everybody else because there's a bunch of people in this thing.
Okay, I don't do accents, but I should try. I feel like I should try.
Yeah, go for it. All right. So this takes place in I did not write down his name, so when I wrote the scene, I just call him boyfriend. So this is Molly Smith, the recent victim of the axe murder. This is her ex-boyfriend's home. So Molly Smith's ex-boyfriend is eating lunch surrounded by family and friends in his home when the police bust through the door. Grooms Lee, the city marshal, leads the charge. Officers push boyfriend to the ground and handcuff him.
You're under arrest.
What did I do?
You murdered Molly Smith. Take him away, boys.
A friend steps in front of the arresting officers. He couldn't have killed Molly, sir. We read the paper. He was with us when she was killed.
Likely story.
Another friend steps forward. He was. We had a party. The whole neighborhood was with him the entire night. A police officer even jumps into the conversation. It's true, boss. I was there. It was a good party.
Doesn't matter if everybody was with him the whole night.
Everyone says, we were.
Because we know he did it. I'll prove it. Mr. Ex-boyfriend?
Yes.
Did you know Miss Molly Smith?
Yes, of course.
There you have it. That's as good as a confession, in my opinion.
So there you go. There's a very dorky scene that I wrote just earlier today.
That's
Yeah,
brutally, like, spot on, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah. So I look. It's a dorky scene, but I'm not exaggerating. He had so many witnesses that he was at a New Year's party the whole evening, and if he had killed her, he would have had to leave the party. He would have been covered in
Covered
blood
in
and come
blood.
back to the party, but he wasn't. He was surrounded by people. I don't think he was probably ever alone before police even came to him, and yet they still really, really targeted him. I don't think he was ever convicted of anything, thank goodness. I could be wrong
But
with
they
that.
did
If anybody
arrest him.
knows, they did. I think they arrested him, or at least they brought him in. And I didn't
Mhm.
write down again Cliff Notes. I was just kind of moving quickly
Right
through
on.
it. But yeah, so if anybody wants to clarify that, write in astudyofstrange@gmail.com. Let me know what happened to the boyfriend and what his name was, because I totally forgot to write it down. I'm so sorry about that. So by March of that year, so it's what, 3-4 months later, there
Mhm.
are more victims. The next two, some people claim to be probably from different attackers, but they do get lumped into it because it could be the same axe murderer. It's Christine Martinson and Clara Strand. They were both severely wounded by similar attackers, but not killed. They survived. And this is where a lot of diverse accounts of what the killer looks like come into play, because they describe him, basically everybody describes him different. Some people call him a white man wearing black face. Some call him a black man wearing a scarf. Some call him a white dude with a cowboy hat. No,
Oh, jeez.
like the descriptions of the killer are so varied. It just makes it even harder to kind of even come up with an idea of who likely could even be
Where
a
do you even
suspect.
start
Like,
with that?
you can't start anywhere. It's just so
Yeah,
hard. The city, meanwhile, as you can tell from the earlier scene we did, they claim that African Americans did it because
of course.
good, honest white folk don't do anything bad ever.
Yeah, right.
So it's a purely racist driven investigation when it starts. So on May 6th, Eliza Shelley was the next victim, and she was killed. She did not survive. Days later, Irene Cross was stabbed and bled to death and
Ooh.
where she worked and lived. And then in June, Clara Dick was attacked but survives. This is one of those basically, when they're survivors, a lot of people don't always lump them into the murder victims. They think it could have been someone else. But for the
Which
sake of
that's a big concern too, like, how many people do they
how
think
many
are
people are
running
going
around
around,
this
yeah,
town stabbing and
stabbing
axing
people,
people to
and
death?
yeah, absolutely. There's another victim killed by an axe, and then an ice pick was shoved into her ear as well. So
Oh,
there's definitely an overkill aspect to this
yeah,
serial
that
killer.
sounds personal.
Yes, and then a woman named Rebecca Ramey was later attacked along with her daughter. I think they were sleeping in the same bed together when they were attacked. Rebecca survived, but her daughter did not make it, which is just devastating. And
Ugh.
then there was a larger group were attacked in September. I think it was 4 people. 2 of them did not make it. And then on Christmas, so it's about a year that this has all been taking place. On Christmas, Susan Hancock was attacked while sharing a bed with her daughter as well. That same night, Eula Phillips and her husband are attacked. Eula does not survive. And because her husband survives, he gets arrested. And he gets convicted just for her killing, not for all the others. The police are just able to manipulate their case into just his wife. That's an interesting thing, because these are the white victims, the Phillipses.
That was gonna be my next question.
Yeah. So there is a
Fascinating.
difference. There is a difference to this, where maybe people thought he blamed it on on this famous axe murder going around, and he just attacked his wife. I don't have all the details on that, but he is convicted. It is later overturned, so he does not
Okay.
get it all pinned on him. There are rumors in the African American community at the time that the killer was a white man that had supernatural powers and
Oh,
could turn
geez.
himself invisible. Which,
Okay,
if
that's
that
gonna
many
help the
people are
case.
getting it, yeah. But if I get it though, like if that many
Yeah.
people are getting attacked and you're trying to create reasons for how it's happening and why this person's not getting caught, like I can easily see that happening. The
I mean, that's
city,
a brutal, bloody crime scene. I mean, attacking somebody with an axe, you're not walking out of there without blood on you. You're just
yes,
not.
yes,
And to do
no,
it repeatedly over and over again and nobody sees anything? It's
Even with
crazy.
survivors, no one can
Yeah.
pinpoint it. Like it's so bonkers. So by my count, I think it's 10 victims being attacked with an axe out of 12 that were likely killed. So that's why it's the axe murder of Austin, because an axe was used for, if not all of them, most of them.
Most of them.
Yeah. Now, during the attacks, this is the thing that actually creeps me out the most when you think about it. During the attacks, the killer actually interacted with 2 young boys, and they were fine. They were left without being attacked.
Ooh.
One was 8, a guy named Douglas Brown, and he actually called the killer a big, fat African American man, is the way he
Okay.
described him. But again, there's people are describing this guy in so many different ways. And the killer covered up the kid with a blanket and was like, shh, covered him up with a blanket before the killings.
Oh, man.
The other child was Eula and James Phillips' 2-year-old son, Thomas, and he was sleeping with his parents when it happened. The killer came in and gave him an apple, kind of like distract him and occupy his time. Yeah, that's just so freaky. That is
That's so
so
bizarre,
freaky.
and the fact that they're
Yeah.
both boys, so he's clearly targeting women
Women. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
younger women too, because 2 of them were daughters, right? Presumably, they were young.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it
Yeah.
just stopped? The attacks just stopped?
Yes, so they stopped. There's a show on PBS called History Detectives, and this is, I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that. Someone that was working for that show has a theory that it's a guy named Nathan Elgin, who was a 19 African American cook in town. And the reason if it is him, the reason the attack stopped is because I think it was in January of the following year of 86 that he was actually caught attacking a woman with a knife, and the police were there. They were able to like chase him, and there was a kerfuffle, and they actually shot him, and he died the next day. I don't know how true that is. I wouldn't like, the reason this is still unsolved is because you can't 100% pinpoint it on this guy.
Mhm.
Some of the local investigators just claim he was just drunk and a bad guy. It's not, a different MO again
Yeah.
of somebody that's strategically targeting people as a serial killer, and someone that's just a very aggressively violent person that loses his temper and whatever,
Right.
still a very bad guy, but it's just a different scenario. So that's why some people don't 100% say it's him, but it could have been, and that may be
It
a
could have
reason.
been, and they do
Yeah.
kind of say that somebody that does this really only stops when they get caught or they die, right?
Get caught or die. There are some people though that claim there is this psychological thing that does happen with some serial killers where they just reach a point, and it's like the gratification they're getting out of it
Mhm.
changes. So
Mhm.
they no longer do it. So there are some killers in history. There are very specific examples of some that just stop. They don't like
That's
slow
true.
down, they just stop. So I would say it's 3 things. I would say they get killed, they die, or the rare ones that just mentally something triggers in them that's a little different, they stop.
I guess that's kinda what happened with the Golden State Killer, right? He
Yeah,
just
yeah,
got to a
just
point where he
stop.
just stopped and lived his life.
Yeah, and some people, depending on what your theory is on, like the Zodiac Killer, because if
Right.
it's not someone that some people think it is, he could have also stopped. Yeah, there's a number of examples out there of that.
That's crazy.
So Austin, the city of Austin was basically terrified even after the killing stopped for decades. And this is just a nerdy history thing that is so me, but something I came across that I love is Austin bought these things called moon towers from the city of Detroit. They're hundreds and hundreds of feet high. They're basically just big lights that light up a city, street lights being everywhere.
Oh.
And I think some of them are still around Austin as like historic monument kind of things, but they bought some moon towers from Detroit, and they would turn them on, and there's actually like local newspaper stuff from the time, even though this is 10 years after the killings when they did it.
Mhm.
But even still 10 years later, a lot of people would comment in the newspapers of women now feel comfortable to walk outside.
Oh my
So
god, because there's light.
there's light.
That is fascinating.
It is. And as per my guess, I'm going much longer than I expected today, so I apologize.
Don't apologize. This is so cool and
Okay,
so
good,
fascinating to me.
good.
Because I've honestly, of all the stuff that I have read and know, I have not heard of any of these.
Oh, good, good.
So
Oh,
this is
that's what I
awesome.
love. That's what I love. I wish, some of these I will have to do longer episodes about one day, just
Yeah.
because they are so fascinating.
Yeah, like
Um,
Mary Cotton rings a bell, but,
yeah, yeah,
not to the extent of all of that.
yeah. Yeah. In
60
hers,
to
I had
21
to I had
people.
to skip like most of my notes, as you could tell, because I was like, oh, she's married, other kids, because I was like, we'll be here all day if I read out
Yeah.
all of her family members.
Yeah.
So our next unsolved case is the Denver Strangler of 1894, and this is so sad to say, but it maybe had only killed 3 people, which seems like, oh, this is basically like a good guy
Yes.
after everybody we've talked about today.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
totally. Low body count. He's practically
well,
a teddy
yeah,
bear.
it's a saint. So the Denver Strangler, this all happened pretty quick. This is a matter of like 2.5 months. And Denver was a pretty big city for 1894 in the West. There was 100,000 people
Mhm.
in it. And the first victim was a woman named Lena Tapper, who was a French quote unquote sex servant. So
Got it.
yeah, I would the way I kind of explain this to myself anyway is like a very high-end escort, like more
Sure.
than just like a Jack the Ripper woman wandering the streets hoping she can pay for a room for the night. This
Right.
is like a high-end escort kind of stuff.
She's not on Craigslist, as it were.
Right, right. And she's a mistress to a local guy named Richard Dimity, which I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. So people that know this case better, let me know. And she was found strangled to death in her bed in her house at 1911 Market Street in Denver. She was part of a group called the Macro, or I don't know French, so Le Vacale d'Amour.
Oh, that was believable.
Oh, good. That's believable. uh, yeah, so she's a sex worker strangled in her bed, and this is around September 3rd. And I don't know much about the investigation, so I don't know. It's a sex worker, and historically, police don't put too much effort into those.
Mhm.
But I can't say for certain. The next victim was Marie Contesseau. She was a member of the same sort of sex group, high-end sex workers. I could not find her address anywhere, but a newspaper I found from the time said that her house was in the same row of houses as the other victims. So I think all the victims, well, I know 2 of them at least are on the same street. So she might have
Mhm.
also been on the same street or nearby. So all in the same area. And she lived with her boyfriend, Tony Sander. And Tony, the story goes that he fell asleep, and when he awoke, he found in the bedroom that she was dead, strangled. And a cord was found dug into her flesh around her neck.
Oh.
Yeah. And she was, a lot of money was missing. Like, apparently they only found like less than $1 in her entire house, and she was well off. She was a
Got it.
high-end sex, which she was doing well for herself. So the fact that they didn't find money, they think theft is part of the motivation to these
Makes
murders.
sense.
Police started just arresting people. They were like, "Hey, you, come here. You might be the person that killed him." So I think they arrested 5 men total, including the first victim's lover, Richard Dimity.
Okay.
And all men ended up getting released because there's not enough evidence. It definitely has the feeling of like, yeah, you're nearby. You're
Maybe
arrested.
something will stick.
Yeah, maybe something will stick. The third and final victim is a Japanese woman named Kiku Oyama. And again, she lived on the same street. I think she lived at 1925. There it is, 1925 Market Street. So very close to Lena Tepper, the first victim. She had only lived in Denver for about a year. She moved to the U.S. to go to the World's Fair in Chicago, the famous World's Fair.
Oh, yeah, that was a
And
thing.
yeah, she stuck in the States and then eventually moved to Denver that year. And on November 13th, she went to bed when her boyfriend, Emi, took a walk. And Emi came home from the walk and found Kiku on bed with a towel around her neck, but she was still alive. She was like gasping for breath.
Oh,
So he
wow.
didn't know what to do. So he runs outside, he grabs neighbors. He's trying to get somebody to help. A police officer is nearby, overhears them. So the police officer comes too. They go inside, and by the time they're back inside, she's dead. They
Oof.
noticed that everything had been rummaged through. So like drawers are open, doors are open, closets are open, everything's open. So again, there could be a motivation of theft involved with these killings. And Emi, the boyfriend, gets arrested.
Of course he
There's
does.
no evidence though. So I don't think any of that sticks, of course. There are some kind of usual suspects with people that write about this case. Richard Dimity, the boyfriend of the first victim. I don't know enough about this to really say whether or not. However, oh, good, that is the right person. I was going to say the right thing. Richard actually was prosecuted for the crimes.
Oh,
He was acquitted. There's not enough evidence there. But the strange thing about his case is he moved to Brazil immediately after he was acquitted.
that's a red
So
flag.
it's a red flag, but what I tried to look up and I could not find, so listeners, if anybody out there has the information, astudyofstrange@gmail.com, I wanted to find out if he had already moved away while the other murders took place, because they happened afterwards.
Oh, that's an
It may
interesting question.
it may not have been because they happened kind of quickly together, so there may not have been enough time for the trial and the
Mhm,
whatever, but it still is something worth looking into in terms of
mhm.
like, was this after everybody died or not? There was also a guy named H. Miller who was caught strangling a woman and was about to cut her. Similar to the previous case we talked about,
Mhm.
police didn't even pin all the murders on this guy because there's like, nah, he's just a bad dude. He's just a bad dude. I don't. It's like a different
Jeez.
MO. Like he
Okay.
was drinking a lot, and just a violent, obnoxious dude that should be arrested for other things. But he didn't kill all the
Yeah,
other women, especially because he was about to cut her. Cutting was not involved in
not
any
a
of the
part of
previous
it.
murders. So yeah, so that's just my thoughts. So to wrap up this evening, we're going to move on. This is actually a case I do want to do a bigger deep dive and a story on, but it's the Thames Torso Murders, also called the Embankment Murders. Everything has multiple names on today's episode.
Tim's torso murder. That
Yeah,
sounds
and Thames, this is
brutal.
the Thames River in London, so
Oh, got it.
Thames, yeah. And what I have always loved about this case is it happens at the exact same time and in the same area of Jack the Ripper. So this is where Jack the Ripper makes
Oh,
a comeback in our case. Some people put the two things together, like, oh, there's dismembered women in one hand and cut up and mutilated women on the other. They're the same killer. It's all in the same area. I don't believe that. Same with even I'll give investigators at the time, the props they should get. They didn't even put the two together because they're so drastically different. They're in the same
gotcha.
area at the same time, but they're very different.
Well, it's easy to think why people would want to put them together
Oh
because it's
yeah.
as disturbing as it is to think about the fact that there's somebody out there butchering prostitutes and whatnot. It's even more disturbing to think that's happening and there's somebody else out there
There's
doing it.
somebody else doing it at the same time in the
Yeah,
same fucking place. Like
that's
that is, oh
brutal.
man. Man, God, London in Victorian England is a
Uh-uh.
place. Oh, and it was all smoky and terrible back then. And
Dark and diseasey and brutal.
not a good place to live at the time. At the
No,
time, I love
at
London
the
now, one
time.
of my favorite cities.
Same.
But yeah. So yeah, I don't want to go too much down the rabbit hole in this because I don't have all day. But yeah, killings that are happening at the same time as Jack the Ripper. There are 4 common victims that are like almost like Jack the Ripper has the canonical victims. This is
Yeah.
similar. There's like 4 canonical victims of the Thames Torso murders. Only one body was ever identified.
Ooh.
So the Thames Torso killer, he dismembered his victims, and dismembering, because I'm a nerd enough person that I was like, let me get my definitions straight. So I actually
What
looked this up just to
exactly
make
does
sure.
that entail?
So it's the act of cutting, ripping, or tearing, or pulling, or
Jesus.
otherwise disconnecting limbs from a living or dead body.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and there is a psychological difference with killers that dismember versus like the severe mutilation with Jack the Ripper. So again, just kind of different MOs.
Right.
Also, none of the like sexual organs were cut up and stuff with the Thames Torso murders, which is basically what Jack the Ripper did. Like that
That was his
was his
thing.
target. Yeah. So these cases are so strange and disturbing on their own that they all kind of have their own names, like each victim's killer. So there's the Rainham mystery, the Whitehall mystery, the murder of Elizabeth Jackson, and the Pinchin Street Torso murder. And they're all likely the same killer, though.
Ooh. Well, Whitehall was the area of Jack the Ripper, right?
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that
Yeah.
was Whitechapel, but I think it's
Oh,
close.
right.
Yeah. These are all not far from Whitechapel. In my very LA brain understanding of London, they're all in the same area.
Right.
So the first, I think this is the first. It's the Rainham mystery. This is 1887, and the remains of a body were found in the Thames River. And it was found by workers, so they were likely like factory workers that were all like along the river, and they found the body. No cause of death could be determined because even though they found other body parts later on, they found the torso first. They found other body parts over like the next month or two in the river, and they were all connected like surgically. They were a surgeon, not surgically, but a surgeon was able to say like, oh, these are all the same body.
Yeah.
They couldn't figure out what killed her. I know she was dismembered, but like she could have been killed before that, and that helps in investigating, but they couldn't tell because they're so cut up. It was just hard and time had passed. It was really
And there
tough.
was no head?
No head. That is correct. Yeah,
Ugh.
no head. So then there's the Whitehall mystery in 1888. And I think this began in September, where dismembered remains are found, this time at 3 different locations in the city. The famous part of this story is that I think it's the left leg that was found, not in the river, but actually on a plot of land that was about to become Scotland Yard. So it was found at
Stop
the
it.
place that they build Scotland Yard. Yeah, that's
That's
how I
kind of
actually
awesome.
found out about this. I think I heard that in a Jack the Ripper documentary. So pretty ironic that the famous police headquarters would be built right on top of where this leg was
Yeah.
found. And then other parts of the body were found along the river through like September of that year. And these
But still, again,
similarly,
no head.
I don't think so. I didn't write that down, but I'm pretty sure no head. And again, these were able to be matched as like all one victim. And Elizabeth Jackson is next. Obviously, they identified her because there's a name to the story.
Yes.
And this is on June 4th, 1889, it's the following year. And her torso was found in the Thames River. More body parts are found along the river the next week. And this one's like, in my understanding of the case, cut up and dismembered more than the other ones because they found like
Okay.
a liver, a leg, a part of a torso. What like there's lots of parts they end up finding.
Oh my God.
And even though they couldn't find her head, they were still able to ID her through other various methods. And
Somebody
she was
recognized her liver?
someone, yeah, I know that liver. This is the really terrible part of the story is she was pregnant, and she was a homeless prostitute. So again, this is where a lot of the connections with like Jack the Ripper come in.
Sure.
Next is the Pinchin Street Torso Murders. This is in September of 1889, so the same year. And a policeman actually found a torso under a railway arch at Pinchin Street in Whitechapel. The thinking, which makes perfect sense, is that whoever this was killed somewhere else, and then this part of her body was dumped in that spot. Genitals not wounded, anything like that. Again, just to not connect it directly to the Ripper, because this is Whitechapel where this is found. This one has a lot of rumors and speculations. A lot of like locals are like, I know who did it. It's my neighbor. Like everybody's like pointing fingers at people. None of them are confirmed or even disproved. Like they're all just local speculation, but you can read about a lot of those. There are 2 other victims that happened before 1872-ish. There's a dismembered woman found in London. Oh, also in 1884, another woman. And then some like modern writers connect it to a murder in Paris that happened in like 1902 or 1903. I don't have enough evidence to have an opinion one way or the other. Yeah, It does seem like a big jump. But that is the story of the Torso Thames murder. So happening at the same time as Jack the Ripper, man.
You may not know this, but I'm wondering something, the dismembering ones always are intriguing because a lot of them, for example, the Black Dahlia, which was never solved officially, there's a surgical element to it, right? Like somebody that knows how to do that has a level of knowledge that your average, murderer doesn't. Is that the case with these?
That is the case with this one, specifically with this one. And I buy that more, especially the third victim who was so caught up. Like it doesn't seem like they're hacking and slashing. It seems methodical. And like if I had, this is a weird thought to have, very macabre, but like if I had to dismember a body, I literally wouldn't know what to do. I'd be laid things everywhere. So I do think this one is very truly someone had to know either medical knowledge or my brain jumps to like a butcher, but even then, like you're not dealing with human bodies all the time. So there is a difference. So
and the tools.
See, the Jack the Ripper case, people always talk about, like a lot of the investigators would say it's got to be even one of the prominent theories of Jack the Ripper is that doctor. I've never, even when I was a kid learning about Jack the Ripper, I was never like, oh yeah, it had to be a doctor because of all the, because that seems more slash and crazy.
That's what I would say.
Yeah. Again, that's just me. I'm not an
Uh-huh.
investigator. I'm not a
Same.
medical person, so I don't know. But like, yeah, I have never really bought into that with Jack the Ripper. I think it could be anybody. But yeah, these, I think someone had to have knowledge about how to dismember a body. I would think,
Mhm. You
like,
would think.
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah,
intense.
very intense, so
It's
intense.
so interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And so that is all our cases today. And I just want to again kind of reiterate what I said before we got into the unsolved ones is I didn't come in today being like, I have theories on these. It was more of like
Yeah,
these are just fascinating cases that I think get overlooked, that I think should be looked at by not just fans of true crime, but even like the criminologists that do like to go investigate historical murders and crimes, because there may be enough there to actually start to pinpoint some of the suspects for the unsolved ones. Like you never know what can happen. So I do think they
absolutely.
need more attention. Jack the Ripper gets all the credit.
Gets all the glory.
It gets all the glory. And
No, I
these are
agree with
cases
you.
that have
Like,
more.
looking at something like this last one, okay, yes, there's 100. No, Denver was 100,000 people. London was
Yeah, yeah.
large at the time,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like,
Oh
that
yeah.
area
Yeah.
is large,
Oh yeah.
but you have to be able to weed some things down, right? Like, look at
Yeah.
who are the doctors, who would have the knowledge, who is in the
Yeah.
area. Obviously, this isn't something that we do, but it seems like somebody now whose mind thinks differently, who can track things differently, there's gotta be a way to come up with some viable
And
not
you never know. Nowadays with, DNA and all of that stuff,
yeah,
some of these cases may, and again, I just did cliff note kind of stuff for these. Some I've investigated or researched more than others today, but I haven't gone in deep enough to find out, like, are there still bits of clothing or potential murder weapons? I know some of the Bloody Bender one, because that's the one I'm diving in for a future episode. That one, they still have some of the potential murder weapons
you're
in
kidding.
museums. So it's like, is there anything we can
Oh,
do to find DNA with any of these things? Is there old newspaper articles that connect something that the newspaper hasn't been found? So it has been digitized and it's on some, back in a filing cabinet in a city record somewhere.
absolutely.
A lot of the Jack the Ripper stuff, because it is such a popular case, a lot of the
Yeah,
old letters and things are saved. So, like,
yeah.
what about some of these others? I bet some stuff exists.
There has to
Um,
be.
yeah, yeah, you would
But who's
think.
got the time and the resources and
Right,
the energy?
right.
Somebody has to really
Yeah,
dedicate themselves to
yep.
that,
Instead of
you know?
Elon Musk buying Twitter, he
Oh my
should,
god.
this is my opinion, but he should just put a lot of that money of his towards
Yeah.
solving cold cases.
Dude, I'd be way more interested in that.
It would be. Think of all he could do so well on all the documentaries that would be made after all of that.
Right?
Yeah.
I would watch every single one of
Yeah.
them too and read every
Netflix.
single book.
Yeah. Man, it would be amazing.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. And these also show the variety of the crazy sort of psychotic nature of humans. Like
Yeah.
all of these have very different motivations. All of these have very different potential mental illnesses that
Yep.
either weren't diagnosed or can't be because it's been too much time.
Yep.
And uh, and also investigators, even today, investigators I think get influenced by politics and bureaucracy, and we got to make sure the whole city's calm and they don't think someone's going to kill them, so they make
Right.
decisions that aren't always in the best interest of actually solving the
Of the
case.
case.
And I do think back then, I think we're harsher on investigators looking back into the past
Yeah, of
because they
course.
really didn't know what they were doing back then. Like, you really did
Mhm.
have to catch somebody red-handed back in those days.
Yeah, they didn't have
Um,
tools.
no, no, but it still is disappointing that some of these investigators weren't either more open-minded or more aware of just taking better care of crime scenes and stuff. Like they weren't
Absolutely.
great at that. So anyway, I'm
Absolutely.
rambling on about the stuff, but
I think it's fascinating though, and comparing the way you did it with comparing the solved cases versus the unsolved cases. I mean, even the solved cases, they just took people's word and they're like, "Oh,
yeah,
you did that a couple hours ago, the dead people? Great, we're gonna hang you now."
yeah, yeah.
The end, close the book, that's it.
The end,
Well,
yeah.
that would never happen today.
No, and nor should it. As much as I do think
Agreed.
the Kellys all probably should have been, sentenced and everything else terrible
For
should have
sure.
happened to them. It's like, yeah, mob justice is not a good thing.
It's
In
not.
fact,
Plus, study them, find out why they did it,
yeah,
like
find out why they did it. Let's make sure no one else heading west stops by some cabin where they can get murdered so easily,
totally.
because there's literally no law out there whatsoever.
None.
But like, find out what's going on. Yeah, and it's interesting. The Bender episode. Yeah, everybody listening, please, if you want to hear that, it'll either be next week when you're hearing this episode, or 2 weeks from now, because it's the holidays and I've been sick and my whole family's been sick, so I'm just moving slow. So subscribe to make sure you get caught up on that. But the Bender one, I'm doing a massive deep dive on,
I can't wait for that.
and
That's gonna be
it's
awesome.
it's fascinating. And one of my favorite little tales I came across is, and it relates to this, with why I'm bringing it up now. But when the Benders they escaped and people are investigating the crime scene in their cabin, there was a neighbor that was kind of friends with the Benders, kind of. I should say
Mhm.
even friendly, like not even like a good friend. But he was also German, and the Benders were German. So they hung him because he's German and knew them and was like friendly
Oh.
with them. So they're like blaming him for all the murders. And they didn't kill
Oh,
him. Luckily, he did not die. But it's just like that mob justice kind of stuff. It's like you can go down some bad
that's
places when that happens.
insane.
It's like it is an innocent man that you're just hanging because you're mad and he's also German. So
Wow.
yeah, it is. There's some terrible stuff that can happen. Oh, humans. Aren't we
Oh,
great, Bridget?
humans. Wacky, wacky, wacky humans. I will say that also one of the reasons that I like to read about this stuff and study this stuff is it really makes me feel good about my own life.
Yeah, yeah,
When I feel like
absolutely.
I'm messed up, I'm like, "Oh, no,
Yeah.
I'm good."
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm so much
I'm
better
fine.
than some other people. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is really sad. Well, thank you for coming on this journey with me into
Thank you for
crazy,
having
crazy
me.
serial killers. Yeah, and I'll keep you informed, because you should come back for some other ones that I'm trying to like piece things together with. Like, I invite people on when I think they'll like something
I
or
love
have
this.
insight into a topic. So I'll have to get you back for some future, because I'm
This
going
was a
into.
great choice.
Oh, thank you. But I am going into. I did like scary things over
Yeah.
Halloween, and just because of the nature of where my brain is at right now, which is not a dark place. I just went into research on the Benders, so now I'm just thinking of serial killers. But it's like
Nice.
I feel like the next 6 or 7 episodes are all going to be serial killers. So
There's so many to go through. I mean,
there's
and there's
it's
so many different
unending.
avenues that you can go,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like you did, you can do the solved, the unsolved. You can do what's the guy, the Iceman, the
hmm, yeah,
Krasinski, that
yeah,
guy?
yeah.
He is mind-blowing to me.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely,
there's
me too.
so
Yeah.
many.
Yeah, and even I want to do some, because similar to like the 1800s, the 19th century murders today, part of that is you every now and then you come across, when there's a modern day serial killer that gets
Yeah,
caught, there's going to be some article or blog or comment from somebody being like, this didn't happen in the old days. Like, this is, they blame it on everything from not enough Jesus in your life to too much Jesus to like
to video
um,
games,
video games. They blame all this stuff. And it's like, no, serial killers have always been around. Human
always.
nature has not changed. And there are
Mm,
terrible people from the past and there are terrible people today. We shouldn't just flag it with that. We need to
no.
study these people so we can understand this. And that is the best thing we can do. And that is
Yeah,
one of the reasons why I've like looking at 19th century killers is like, people think Jack the Ripper kind of started the
yeah,
whole thing. It's like, no, no,
no
no,
way.
no. No, he didn't. They've always been around. So I want to do some episodes about serial killers in sort of far off countries, either in like
I
Asia
love
or
that.
Russia, like get out of the Western civilization world and do some, because they're there too. They're
They're
everywhere. So
everywhere, and I think it's an
yeah.
interesting thing that you could study at some point, the evolution of how people were able to get away with things in the early days
Oh
to,
yeah.
like, the
Yeah.
'70s was ripe with
Yeah.
serial killing, right? And how that's changed into now, how it's, like,
Yeah.
more difficult because of being on the grid and,
Yeah.
there's cameras everywhere you look, and just
Yeah.
science and technology has changed so much, just the
Yeah.
evolution of how people can get away with
Yeah.
these
It,
horrible things.
it's so interesting. And on Autobiography, my TV show, we did an episode about the Manson murders, because they had
Oof,
a bunch of cars. It was all the
yeah.
cars with the Mansons. And again, I'm going on a tangent here, but one of the things, because I've always been fascinated with serial killers, but I went and filmed and walking around like their ranch and like where they lived and
You
all
went
that
to
kind of
Spawn
stuff.
Ranch?
I went to Spawn Ranch, yeah.
Oh.
Went all around it, filmed all around it. I even like went into the rock. There's a famous picture of the Manson family like under
Yep.
this rock. I'm like, I have pictures and video of me under the rock. And I gotta say, I'm one of those people of like, oh, this is so cool. Like I like dark stuff. I'm gonna have so much
Yeah.
fun. Being there was unbelievably like depressing. Like I
Oh.
definitely kind of want to do more of that. There's an
Yes.
interesting part of me that's like, oh, this is fascinating, but like
Yeah.
being there was not as quote unquote fun as I thought, because I'm
Well,
like,
I think
oh,
that's the empathetic part of, like, not
yeah, yeah,
fangirling out in front of Jeffrey
yeah,
Dahmer's house, and you
right,
know what I mean?
exactly.
Like, you have to
There's a
honor
difference. Yeah,
the fucked upness that actually
yeah,
came from that place.
absolutely. Yeah, ugh, crazy. Anyway,
Fascinating.
yeah. So you gotta come. You gotta come back on. That's the way I'm gonna
I
leave it
will.
today. You gotta
Ask
come
me
back on.
anytime. I'll even do homework beforehand if you need me
Oh
to. This was a
yeah, yeah.
blast, Michael. Thank
Nice.
you.
Yeah,
I
of
think I'm
course.
gonna
Thank
go,
you.
like, doom scroll some puppies and kitties or something to
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
No, that was fascinating, and I did. I took notes, and, I'm gonna be
Nice.
looking into some of these a little bit more too, so thank you so much.
Thank you, Bridget.
Thanks, Michael.
And that'll do it for today's show. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way. This is the week of Thanksgiving. I hope everybody is enjoying the holiday. And I am very thankful for all of you, our listeners. This is still a brand new show and something that just started from the pure joy and fun of wanting to share these kind of stories. And I am just so thankful and grateful for the feedback and the attention that I'm already getting. I cannot thank you enough. I can confirm, since I hung up with Bridget, that our next episode is going to be 2 weeks from today. It will be a deep dive on the bloody benders, the bloody benders, which I'm very excited about. So to stay up to date, to make sure you don't miss that episode, make sure to subscribe, rate, review, or follow us on Instagram at astudyofstrange. And as usual, if you have comments, ideas, things you want to share with me, reach out, astudyofstrange@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you. And also, I've mentioned in the last few episodes, I am compiling personal stories, personal accounts from people that have witnessed or seen an unidentified flying object for a future episode. So please reach out to me, send me an email, astudyofstrange@gmail.com. I would love to hear about it. We'll leave it for that tonight. Make sure to check out our show notes, our website, astudyofstrange.com, Patreon. There's going to be some new content at the beginning of December on there. And happy Thanksgiving, and thank you, and good night. Hey everyone, I wanted to take a second to let you know about Audible. This is an advertisement. I may make a tiny commission, but I'm only going to promote things I use and I love, and Audible fits that requirement. I use it literally every day. Audible is an audiobook and podcast service that lets you enjoy all of your listening entertainment in one place. Audible membership gives all members a chance to discover new shows, new favorites, new formats, like Words Plus, an exclusive music series right now. I primarily use Audible to listen to podcasts, but I do fit in an occasional audiobook, which helps me fit in research for this show into my busy day. New members can try Audible free for 30 days. 30 days free. Get access to the growing selection of originals, podcasts, everything. All you have to do is visit audibletrial.com/strange. Again, that's audibletrial.com/strange. Or see our show notes for a link. Thank you.